Hi, Elizabeth. So happy to have you on TimeFree. Thanks for joining us. We've been talking to mums who are making it happen for themselves and sharing stories. So, with that said, do you want to give us a little bit of an intro to who you are and what you're doing?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. So my name's Elizabeth Willits. I run a recruitment business called Investing in Women that helps people find flexible part-time and home-based jobs throughout the UK.
I saw you on LinkedIn when
Yeah,
I was going on my journey to find something that's more flexible to allow me to be a present mom.
yeah.
So, absolutely, what you're doing is working.
Oh, thank
So
you.
before we launch into everything you're doing now, do you want to give us a little bit of a summary of your time before kiddos and
Yeah.
then the aftermath of having kids and the realization of having to kind of make the decision between being a present mom and also wanting to build something that gives you financial stability?
My background's recruitment, so I've always worked in recruitment. I started in recruitment in 2007, started my career working for Hays. I don't know if people have heard of Hays, but they're one of the world's largest recruitment agencies. So they're a global business, and I recruited qualified accountants into banks before moving into HR recruitment with them. And then in 2015, I moved in-house to Deloitte, which is one of the big four. And Rude was one of their talent acquisition managers. I recruited their consultants, and then unfortunately was made redundant in the height of the pandemic. My children were 1 and 3 at the time, and I was working part time at Deloitte. I'd managed to negotiate a part time contract, and was made redundant. Couldn't find another part time job, and I could see what was happening to so many friends, where they were having to exchange something well paid, they trained really hard for something lower paid, lower skilled, just to get that flexibility. So I started the business for me, for my friends, all the recruiters that were approaching me, it was full time only. And, my best friend had a postgraduate qualification and ended up taking a minimum wage job because that was the only one that offered the flexibility she needed. So I did it for her as well. And yeah, I look back on my career at that point. I'd never recruited anybody part time. We didn't even register people that wanted to work part time when I was at Hayes. So thought I wanted to use my recruitment experience to try and make a difference.
Absolutely. And my feeling is that even in a big city like London, some of the bigger firms, even though they have policies to allow for flexible working once women become moms,
Yeah.
they prefer not to take that route because I think there are a lot of sort of complex reasons, and I think working with some of these companies you'd probably know, but I think our priorities do change, and the way
Yeah.
that we want to work changes as well. And I think it's fair to say that employers don't have to pick that up if they don't want to. I think that there are some that are willing to. But absolutely in smaller companies or other regions where that's not so well known, it's just absolutely not a thing. I think as it was however many years ago in London, it just wasn't something that people considered an issue that needs to be solved. And I think that things are moving along, and the work that you're doing is really valuable. So thank you for that. But I think that people they just are unaware of the fact that, women don't want to have to choose between being moms and being with their kids and also having careers. And I think it's the same goes for men now. Men are taking an active
Yeah.
role in raising their kids, and so there's flexibility as one of the top priorities for professionals across the board, men and women. So I think what you're doing is really valuable. Can I ask you about your transition from motherhood initially into employment? Was that quite seamless, seeing that you were kind of in the industry already, and it seems that you were able at that time to get something flexible, or was that something that you had to absolutely fight for as well?
I mean, yeah, I had to ask for it, and and I didn't hear back for a long time, and I was quite anxious about that and whether I was going to get it or not. And I remember not feeling that if I didn't get it, I wouldn't go back because I didn't want to return to work full time. I
Yeah.
tried really hard to have my children. My first daughter is through IVF, so there was no way after trying so hard to have children that then I wanted to leave her and go back
Mhm.
to work full time. So I do remember being really anxious because it took a long time for that flexible working request to be accepted. And once it was accepted, I felt a huge sense of relief. I'd lost my preferred nursery because I was waiting to hear back if it would be accepted, and then obviously waiting then back to hear what days I could work. But I was quite happy to go back because I went back 3 days a week, and this was before COVID. And one of those days I worked from home, so it was 2 days in the office, one from home. And actually, it was quite a nice balance, and the week went really quickly. And I'd gone back to not the role I'd left, and it probably was a bit of a slight. And if I'd have really dug into it, I would have been a bit like, because I went in at a more junior level. I took the same pay, but also in a way it was quite good because I left work at work basically. Didn't like, and then the days that I had off with my daughter, I didn't feel the need to log in, check emails. I did think I had at that point a really nice work-life balance, actually.
That's really, really incredible. And my story was different in that I did want to go back to work. I actually really loved my company that I worked for, but
Yeah.
they made it impossible. They said, from the outset, sorry, we will not be offering you any of these options.
Yeah.
And I had to make the decision, like you said.
Yeah.
I also have a miracle baby, and he's the kind of the reason for my life now, really. I
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sounds a bit dramatic, but it's magic and we get to experience that. And I think that as a sensible human being, you're going to say, look, what are the long-term life goals that I want? And sacrificing those moments for work, I think is not the right was not the right decision for me. So I think that that's really helpful that you kind of had that option going forward. And I think so many women, one, don't even know that they can request something like that.
Yep.
It's not kind of made abundantly clear when you do have a child, and then also they fear the repercussions. Like you were saying, I mean, at this time I was in the running for a promotion, all those things, and everything disappeared once I told
Yeah.
the employer that I was pregnant. And
As it
even
did for
though,
me as well, because I was
yeah,
going to
it
go for a
just it was
promotion, and they
never
were like,
discussed
"Oh,
again.
it's
So we can laugh about it now because we've kind of taken different strategies in our lives, but it's painful, and it's painful to go through when you definitely need the stability, as you were saying. And I read an article the other day saying that everyone wants to be entrepreneurs now, and it's not. No one wants to be entrepreneur when you've just had a child. You want to have that
yeah,
stability, right? Because as you were saying, being able to leave work at work is great. Being able to do your job
yeah,
competently and then do life, which becomes much harder with a kid, is kind
yeah."
of what we're looking for. But and then when you find yourself during the pandemic, um with nothing. What's that felt
Nothing.
like
So I
for
was
you?
made redundant. And yeah, I mean, it was one of those things. Childcare was going to be hellishly expensive because obviously I had two at that point, and um, when you looked at the maths, you're like losing before you've even stepped out the door, aren't you? Because
Yeah.
the childcare, my salary didn't cover the childcare, etc. So it was but obviously the decision was then taken out of my hands. So I
Yeah.
was made redundant. I did want to work part time, couldn't find anything part time. And then I just thought, do you know what? I'm going to give it a go because actually I always did feel I had quite an entrepreneurial sort of itch. When I was a kid, I'd have little stalls at the end of the drive. I pretended to set up
Yeah.
a bridal shop, and I was always playing shops at home. So I felt like I did have that, and it sort of came. It was difficult because my children were still young, so I set up the business when
Mhm.
my youngest was two, and my eldest was 3, coming up to 4. So it was, I still had young children, but I
Yeah.
suppose I was out of that baby phase where they're,
Yeah.
wake all night and things like that. And I think that makes
Mm.
such a difference when you're getting full night's sleep to then be able to,
Absolutely.
to have the energy to start something new.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how candid you are on some of your LinkedIn posts where you're posting pictures of yourselves working at the dinner table while the kiddos are eating and there's mess
Yeah, yeah,
everywhere. And I think that's life. And
yeah,
people like to pretend that it's all clean and sanitary and wonderful. But
yeah, yeah,
actually you just get on with it. And I think that is very endearing, and it makes me respect you more as a professional to say, hey, it's almost a burn the boats analogy. You no other choice, but I'm going to make this work. And I think that that's
yeah.
amazing. And to see what you've done with that is really
Oh, thank
inspiring. I
you.
think, yeah, take a step back, Elizabeth, and say, hey, I created something out of nothing, out of a hardship. And I think that that's
Yeah,
massive. And you've been so successful in the sense that you have something that's running and working, and you've written a book. That's
Yes, I've written a
amazing.
book. Yeah, that was crazy. That was like unexpected, but yeah, I wrote a book.
Everyone talks about it and wishes that they would, but you've actually done it. What was that
Yeah,
process like?
that has never been on my bucket list either. Basically,
Mm.
I was on someone else's podcast, a bit like obviously I'm on yours, and the a lady, it's an editor at Wiley, which is a publishing house, heard me speak on the podcast, and then she emailed me asking if I'd ever considered writing a book. And at first of all, it sort of landed in my junk, and I was like, this is not, this is crazy. But then
The spam.
yeah, it's spam. But then I just thought, well, I've not got anything to lose by emailing back. So I emailed back and it turned out it was genuine. So then I had to write a pitch. Never done that before. And then I had it was a really tight time frame. So I got a little book deal in the December and the book had to be ready by I think June, July. So it's really
Oh,
tight. So all last year was spent every evening writing this book. And yeah, it was very time consuming, but you realize how much you can achieve when you put your mind to it. And I listened to a brilliant podcast about how to write a book when you have a limited time. And it was sort of saying if you just set a timer for 30 minutes a day and just write, don't overthink, just write, just set a timer. And then so that's what I did. I'd come down after I put the kids to bed, I'd set the Alexa timer, I'd put magic on or something like that and just write and then not overthink it. Because they also said in writing the book in this podcast is the hardest thing. Editing's quite easy, but a lot of people get stuck because they write and edit, write and edit. So just write and then you can edit. But yeah, you realize how much you can achieve in just 30 minutes
that is incredible. That's a really top tip. I think that's a tip that you
for
can do so
anything.
many things if you that's really cool. And
30
if you have
minutes,
Alexa
just
screaming at you to do something, I think you can't escape it. It's
yeah.
in your house. Okay.
Exactly. Just do it. I think there's so much. If you're wanting to start up a business and maybe you're working at the moment, you think, do I have time? Literally 30 minutes. You can really like move needles in 30 minutes. And I try, I'd make a cup of tea. Sometimes I'd have a biscuit, put the radio on, and it didn't feel too much like work. It felt
Mm,
okay. And I think, you know what? Yeah. And I quite like that. I had that deadline, every night was the
yeah.
30-minute and then the time would go off.
Yeah, and didn't allow you to kind of get in that trap of thinking, I need to do a good chunk. It needs to be
Yeah.
quality. It just gets you over that hurdle if you just
Yeah. Yeah.
start. And I suppose did you then were you able to continue for longer than 30 minutes on
Yeah.
most days
Sometimes
or
you'd get in a
because you just
flow.
started?
Yeah, sometimes you're
Mm.
in a flow and you think, right, I'm going to finish, and you might do up to an hour because you were in the flow. And other days, I'll be like, oh God, that time has gone off.
So
It depended
how
where
did
you
you
were.
what was the strategy in terms of creating the book? Like what was the aim and the purpose that you wanted to achieve with the book? So
I
do you
think
want
it
to
was
introduce the book
just
first as
the
well?
book is called Flex, and I
Hmm.
feel it's like an A to Z manual on how to progress in your career and how to get a job. And I honestly think it's good for anybody at whatever stage they're at in their career. So it starts off with how to define what you want. And I think so many people miss this. They'll go to school, they pick A levels or, go to college, and maybe they're just influenced by other people, whether that's parents, friends, teachers, without actually doing that inner work on, who they are, what they
Mm.
want. So it starts off with how to define what you want and who you are. So I always recommend that everybody does a strengths-based test as well. So the one I recommend in the book's Gallup, but that's one I did, but I know there's lots of others around as well. So do a strengths-based test because it's quite interesting what I've read the book and Gallup sort of says actually we're strong in certain areas, all of us, and maybe not so strong in others. And often school, maybe workplaces are trying to round people out, but actually
Mm.
we're often so much better if we forget about our weaknesses and lean into our strengths. And those strengths are sort of part of our DNA. They're determined really young. So find out what your strengths are, lean into those, make sure you are then picking a career that complements those strengths rather than playing up your weaknesses because you're never going to be happy in that career. You're never going to feel fulfilled. And then talks about how to make a career pivot if you're doing a job you don't like or you've realized it doesn't play to those strengths. How to then obviously write CVs, how to write a cover letter, what to do with your LinkedIn, how to prepare for interviews, handing in your notice. There's even a chapter on starting business as well. So yeah.
Amazing. That sounds like every single teen and young adult as well.
I
who's working. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they were like sort of saying, oh, it could be aimed at mums, but actually, I really do think it's valuable for like younger
Yeah.
people as well, because I know so many
Yeah.
people fall into the wrong career that they hate, and then they end up sort of stuck for 40 odd years. And
Absolutely.
I just think, what
Yeah.
a depressing thing to be for a long time.
Yeah. I think the thing is, it's a challenge, right? So at the age of 17, 18, you're supposed to choose what you're going to do with the rest of your life. And at that
Yeah,
time, I mean, you've got hormones rushing through you. You just, you're thinking about what are my peers doing? And
yeah,
there's a lot of pressure at that point. So I think there is something to be said about really going inside and understanding yourself. And no one ever teaches you unless you kind of lucked out on the parent lottery. You didn't have parents who had done the self work to be able to understand that they need to help you to achieve that as well.
yeah.
I don't even think that I was aware that there was I had to look inside myself until I got
No,
into
I
my
wasn't
30s.
either. I wasn't either, to be honest. But
Yeah.
I think it's not,
So
we've
it's
got a lot
been,
more resources now, haven't we, and tools available.
I think people are becoming more aware of it as well. I think that that's really valuable. And then you established the company, and do you want to talk us through that journey and where you are now and where you're wanting to go?
Yeah, so we are now a team of three. So I've got me, a recruitment manager, and a marketing manager. We all work from home. We all work school hours, which is something that I dreamt of, having a team that, worked flexibly in those flexible jobs that I was searching for when I was looking for a role. So this is something, I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the recruitment market's not been easy. I'll be honest, the
Mm.
past year, it's on past couple of years, it's been a tough market. So I'm so proud that we're still here, we're still in profit, still working with some brilliant clients. And hopefully, as the market turns and gets better as well, we'll continue to grow and expand.
Amazing. Congratulations on not only creating a company, but also empowering three other individuals that was in your space. I think that that's really transformative, and that's the power of us talking about it.
Yeah.
This journey is something that I'm on because at the point I really suffered with postnatal depression. And at the point that I didn't see a way forward, and I was really in a dark place. And I thought there are surely women out there who have found a way to be present moms and also be able to kind of create their own financial independence. And I thought, well, why don't I just start talking to people and why don't I record this journey? And nothing's perfect. Like, I don't know how to be a podcaster. I don't know how to do any of
Yeah.
these things, but I really just I want to have other women who was in that dark place where I was to look at something and say, hey, these people did it and this is the map that they used, and potentially I can find my way out of my maze by following some of the steps that they've taken, because it's not easy. Some people's journeys are way easier and some people's
Yeah.
people really have struggles. And I think um talking about it and creating a community where we can support each other and potentially collaborate on things, that's amazing.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of the aim of what I'm trying to do. um and for you, do you find within Investing Woman, are you finding that companies are aware of flexibility as an issue, or do you feel that you're having to do a big education piece for companies to generally adopt this and embrace it? Because there's a massive talent pool out there of
Yeah.
women who've had a lot of experience and are really incredible at what they do, but they've chosen to be mom. And not only women, but men too. I'm seeing more and more men posting publicly on the fact that, like, the new flex being the fact that you can spend time with your children.
Yeah. I mean, I
What's
think
your
it is
thought on that?
obviously increasingly more
Mm,
important to employees that they
mm,
have that flexibility. And I think obviously the beauty of COVID, and I'm talking quite generally, probably I'm talking, I think there's obviously quite a divide as well on what jobs can be worked flexibly and what jobs can't. So white collar jobs, in my mind, most white collar jobs can be worked flexibly, whether that is just flexing start and finish time or hybrid or remote or whatever. That does offer people often the flexibility they need, want, and they don't necessarily have to work part-time if they don't want. Um,
yeah,
and I think that often, like, the people I speak to in HR, it's quite female heavy, that industry. They're often quite sympathetic to the fact that, people want to work flexibly, but it's then actually those people in this, senior C-suite that are a little bit more resistant. resistant, depending obviously on the organization. I do find that smaller organizations are often much more open. And another benefit of COVID was the amount of women that set up businesses that are now in a position where they're hiring. And they often, have set up businesses because they couldn't get flexibility at work. And so that's therefore a priority for them to offer. But there was obviously a lot of jobs that should be able to be worked flexibly, but they can't be worked flexibly in the sense that you can do hybrid. You might not be able to have ownership on
Mm.
your start and finish time. You're talking about retail jobs, hospitality, cleaning,
Mm.
those sorts of jobs, which, in some cases can be a bit trickier to, have that ownership of your time that I think we all
Mm.
aspire to have.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of sort of uh, nonsense online about these people kind of working 2 hours a day on the beach and making
Yeah.
millions. And I think they're making money from this
I
book.
think
And I
that's
think
a
those
real
things,
disservice to people. I don't
yeah,
like that at
absolutely.
all. And there's a lot of like LinkedIn personal branding experts, and I just think they've never actually run businesses. They're just selling, snake oil really. And I don't like. And there's a lot of business coaches online that have never run a business. So if you're wanting to set up a business, make sure that the person you're getting advice from has run an actual business, not just set up a pretty LinkedIn profile and peddled that as a
Absolutely.
business.
Absolutely. Verify. I think it was Alexa Mosi who was saying, why are you listening to people whose lives you don't want? I think that that's really important that
Yeah.
if someone is critiquing you, um, take it with a pinch of salt because, unless you want to be where they are, they really don't have that route to where you want to go. Um, and take it with a pinch of salt. And then I think also, like you were saying, we underestimate what we're able to achieve
Yeah.
with consistency. And that's why I really loved your idea about setting aside 30 minutes. And that's a non-negotiable. And it just forces you to start. It's like when I was starting to
Yeah.
meditate, I hated it because sometimes it made you feel like you were failing if you didn't do it right. I don't even think that there's a way to do it right, but do you know what
Yeah.
I
I've
mean? It
always
was that
struggled with meditation. Yeah.
yeah. But I set myself a timer to do just 2 minutes, and then it takes you out of that initial anxiety around starting or saying, oh, but the laundry has to be done and we have to do this and the kids, it just gives
Yeah.
you a bit of an option to start. And once you've started, you can get going.
Hmm.
So I think that that's a really valuable piece of advice. Can I ask you personally, what are the things that you have done that have shifted the needle the most in terms of your own ability to look after yourself? So as a mom, obviously, there's a part of you that needs to be selfish because kids, especially when they're very young,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're quite demanding, obviously. But what are the things that you think that have had the biggest effect in enabling you to be able to start up, run the business, and give you energy to carry on? I know you mentioned sleep, which is a big one for a lot of people. I mean, my little boy's
Yes.
4, and we are still struggling
I
to
know. Well,
to
like,
have him
my
sleep.
my girl's 8 now, and sometimes she's a nightmare. It depends on her when she's 8. Yeah. So obviously, sleep is, if you can get sleep, then that's such a huge benefit. I think the things that have really helped me have been that I have always done a YouTube video, exercise video, every morning, and that's just like what I do, and I don't feel any guilt over that. The kids watch TV, or they might play on their iPads or whatever, but that's my half an hour. I'm gonna do that, and then I'll make them breakfast. And that makes me feel so much better. If I don't do it, I don't feel good. Um, I also have spent a lot of time like listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks. I love walking my dog on my own. Not with the kids, on my own, listening to a podcast, and I've had so many ideas. Just having that time, or if I'm walking back now from school after doing the school run, I'll listen to a podcast. I never sort of have that like dead time. I'll always try and do like two things at once, or if I'm doing the laundry, I'll put a podcast in, I'll put my AirPods in and listen to a podcast. But I think that self-development has been really important to me as well. And every night I read a business book, and that as I'm going to sleep, and that has also really helped. And things like that, I think it's like learning and development gives me like a lot of
Mm.
energy and sense of achievement and pride. So
You know what's crazy is that I've realized that every single guest that I've had on so far has mentioned some form of physical exercise as something that has absolutely moved the needle for them, that has absolutely made a
really,
difference. And it's so crazy because that's one of the biggest things that I gave up. I used to do a lot of aerial sports and aerial yoga. And when I was suffering with the postnatal, and also it was during COVID, so everything was closed.
Yeah.
I kind of you fall into this routine of not doing anything, and you feel that you get physically weaker. And I've picked up lots of weight, and you start to feel really bad about yourself, and that's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So one of the big reasons we've just done a big move to Spain,
Oh, nice.
and one of the reasons that we've done that is because we want to be outside. We want to be moving our bodies because did feel that we were kind of getting in stuck in a rut where we were.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that that's really insightful, and I think these little nuggets and the
I mean,
reason
I
why
wouldn't
I
say
started getting that energy out, the
I
nervous
think,
energy as well, and just
yeah,
moving your body
yeah.
is
And I've got
amazing.
an
So it's
Apple
amazing that
Watch.
that tracks an Apple
Yeah, and the
Watch
Apple Watch is
yeah,
good because that tracks obviously your steps and things like that. And
yeah,
yeah, I think it is good to just move. And
yes,
like I said, doesn't you don't have
absolutely,
to go for a run. You don't have to, I mean, if I didn't if I had more time, I would spend longer doing exercise. I would probably
yeah.
go to the gym. I'd probably do more runs in the week. So at the moment it's just like that half an hour YouTube before school. But I think it's important to fit in what you can. And like I said, like with the book example, it doesn't need to be a big amount of time, just what you can do.
Just a little bit every day. That's amazing. And then were there any business books that you read and you were like, yeah, this is amazing.
So yeah, oh my gosh, so many books. Story Brand by Donald Miller. He's really good, and he's also done I think growing your small business or something like that. But he's called Donald Miller. He's done some brilliant books. Obviously, you mentioned Alex Hormozy. He's done some good
Yeah.
books. I really liked another one by a lady called Rachel Rogers. We Should All Be Millionaires. That was brilliant. And there was another one, Tiffany Apisha or something. That was another money one. I'm trying to think what I've read. I've read a lot of Why 10x is easier than 2x, The Gap and the
Mhm.
Gain. They're really good. Yeah. Very rare I read a fiction book now. I'll read a fiction book on holiday.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I think I also leaned into all those things. And I think what's crazy is it's not the information that you get from them in particular, but for me it's been the mindset shift. So, as a legal professional, you're put into this track and it's either GC or partner, or you have a very set career path. But for me, I always looked at my GCs and my partners, and I saw that they had no relationship with their kids. They were in the office
Yeah.
literally all of the time. Like
Yeah.
the film or series Suits, where everything looks glamorous. I mean, the only thing that's true about that is everyone's at work at night. So it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
really desperate, I think. And they have terrible relationships with their partners, most of all. And you just look at them and you're like, oh man, I don't want that life. But
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
the kind of trajectory that you're on. And so I had to make a decision. And I think the more I'm learning about other options, my mind is seeing opportunities differently. And at the moment, what I'm doing for some of my clients is I'm advising them on efficiencies and process improvements that would kind of build profitability into their business. And I'm
Oh,
so
nice.
excited about that. Like it's something that gives me so much energy. And then I can do the kind of legal and compliance thing in the background as well, because obviously with efficiencies, you need to make sure that everything, is streamlined. And it absolutely makes me happier than kind of sitting in an office and pandering to the higher ups. And actually, that's kind of it. I think we find our way by trial and error. And I would love to
Yeah.
read your book and really do more internal work to see what those strengths are, so I can lean into them. So
Yeah.
thank you
I would
for
recommend
yeah.
that. Yeah. The another book I liked is Atomic Habits. Have you read that one?
Yes, I have.
That's a good
I
one,
mean,
isn't it?
there's so much information out there, and I think that with ChatGPT and those things, I've seen actually somebody who posts about using ChatGPT as your personal coach. You mentioned these coaches who've
Yeah.
never run a business, and there are ways that you can kind of, I mean, obviously taking everything with a pinch of salt, but there are ways that you can kind of create these strategies for yourself. Um, and with Atomic Habits, I mean, everything you read makes sense, but then putting things into practice it takes longer. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
to really prioritize those things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been good. And then, Elizabeth, going forward, what are your ambitions, hopes, dreams? How can the people who are listening to this podcast support you to make those things possible. Because I think if we have someone like you who is enabling women to work more flexibly, that's incredible.
Well, obviously, I would love more flexible jobs, to see more flexible jobs, to see more part-time jobs, particularly at a senior level. I think that's the issue is that I think I'm not saying it's easy at all, but I think people have historically found it easier to return to a job part-time, maybe after maternity leave, or paternity leave. But so when they look on the external market, they find it really
Mm,
tricky to find something that offers that flexibility. So I'd love to
mm,
see more jobs being much more open to flexible part-time home-based jobs. And I think I really would like to see the onus on the employer to the default to be flexible working. And if it can't be flexible, then the employer has to explain why. But that is like the default. That would be, I think, really good. And I think that would massively change the game. You know, particularly for women and particularly for the gender pay gap, because there is just such a lack of senior part-time jobs. You often get them, you get them at the lower level, but it's the senior level where I think,
mm.
we really struggle.
Absolutely. And what are the benefits for employers to pick up more candidates who are working flexibly?
Yeah, because obviously they get access to a big talent pool of people that want to work flexibly.
Mm,
We see so many applications to part-time roles because there is such a lack of them. So,
mm,
they really are like hot and they're exciting. And from a cost saving perspective, obviously it costs less to employ someone on a part-time basis because their
hmm
salary is prorated. You're paying less in salary, but you're also paying less in employee NI. So there's a big cost saving. And there's lots of studies as well that show people, that work flexibly, that work condensed hours are more productive per hour. So the
mm,
output is often a lot higher per hour. And and yeah, there's also studies that show that, Zurich was one of the first, well, was the first company to advertise all roles as open to flexible part-time work. They had a massive increase in female applicants, and studies show that the more women at senior levels within organizations, the more
mm.
profitable as well that business is.
That's incredible. I know that there's kind of this 4-day work week that people are
Yeah,
trialing as well. And I know that the outcome of that was that it was very positive. I think
yeah,
people having the time freedom to be able to choose how they spend their time also increases the efficiency overall, right? So if you have more
yeah,
time to, like you were saying, like exercise and look after yourself, you're gonna be a more efficient worker rather than,
yeah,
if you're in burnout and having those kinds of challenges.
yeah,
Um, and I know that the woman in director positions is also a massive issue. I mean, all over the world. I remember even when I was in South Africa, at the firm we were at, it was very rare to see a director or a partner who was a woman. And I think it's because of that
yeah,
kind of decision. And the women who were directors either did not have children or they had children who were way older when
yeah,
they
or
started,
full-time
so that they didn't,
nannies.
yeah, yeah, they
And I
didn't
think
have
that's
those
it. I
challenges.
think that's something that's been missing. Like I've known, when I was at Deloitte, the female partners had full-time nannies.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's that, isn't it? It's like not everybody wants to have a full-time nanny. And I think it's
It's also,
that's
yeah,
missing there.
it's also hitting that sweet spot where you are in the position where you are already earning enough income to be able to afford a full-time nanny when
Yeah,
you have a child versus when you're very young and you have, because a lot of people don't have that support. They don't have family
yeah,
support in the ways that they would have had previously. So that's really difficult. And then also, I mean, I remember when my little one was going into nursery and we had the challenges after COVID where all the nurseries were closed. So it was
yeah,
like desperate housewives in our little Surrey town to try and get our children into nursery. People were
yeah,
applying for nursery spots before their children were born, and I thought that was a bit nuts. But so there's all these other challenges, and then you read the reports about children going into institutionalized care very young and
yeah,
having real developmental challenges later on, and also sort of lighter challenges like the social like issues and issues around anger management and nervousness and it is difficult. I mean, our little boy started school and he was super happy to go to school, and now we're having the challenge where he just doesn't want to go in, and it's so hard. What do you do? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things we're still grappling with, and I think for new moms, especially with all the hormones that you've got going on, to make that decision is so hard. I think
Yeah.
to be able to put them in nursery when they're crying, and knowing that actually
Yeah.
that's not the best thing for them.
I
So
know.
so what you're
I
doing is
used to cry a lot, and I'd be then going to work crying, and then that's not a good state of mind to start your day at all.
no, no, absolutely not. And I still get it today. I'll like all
Yeah.
snot and tears in the school, and people are,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
looking at me. But it's hard. It's that they're your kind of the most precious thing in the world to you. So it
Yeah.
is hard to have that. And I think more and more women are talking about those kinds of challenges.
Yeah.
Because I think in the past those were things that you just felt that you had to
Yeah.
hide,
Accept. Yeah.
or from a professional perspective that everyone was doing it. And I think there's still a bit of that culture, particularly in the corporate world, where it's like we did it, so you just have to do it.
Yeah.
I remember a CEO that I was working with at the time that I was trying to return to work, who said, "Oh, you're so lucky that you got to take maternity leave. I didn't get to take any maternity leave." And at the time I was going through this trouble of trying to return to work, and they were making it very hard. And I just thought, like, it is strange that it takes some time for the world to kind of adjust to where we want to be. I
Mm.
think we're making moves in the right direction, but I
Yeah.
think
I
it's
do.
important to talk about it, and to understand ways that we can move on. So if you today was someone who hadn't started your business, you hadn't returned to work on a flexible basis, and you've just had a child and you're really trying to negotiate your way forward, what would you suggest to that woman who's saying, "Hey, I want to spend time with my child, but going back to work means taking either a massive pay cut or having to make these sacrifices that I'm not willing to make. Um, what do I do? Where do I start?"
I mean, obviously, it's completely dependent on everyone's circumstances. So everyone's circumstances are different, and some people may want to become stay-at-home parents. Some people may want to, but not be able to afford to become a stay-at-home parent. So
Mm,
it's really hard to make, I think, a general sweeping advice. I
mm,
think I'm pleased I went back 3 days, and I remember even at the time thinking, "Oh, do I even want to go back 3 days?" So I didn't want to leave my daughter, but I'm pleased it did because I felt it did keep me in the workplace for that little bit
mm,
longer. And obviously, you're topping up your pension still, you're getting your NI
mm,
credits.
yeah.
Um, so I think if you can negotiate flexible working where you work, or you do find another part-time job, then that to me felt like the best of both worlds for me personally. And yeah, for the reasons I've outlined. But I think obviously there is that bigger picture as well, because I know so many people that have stepped out of the workforce completely
Mm,
and left for a few years and then struggled to get back in when their children are,
mm,
are at school and they want to go back. So I think
mm,
it's also thinking short term, but thinking long term as well.
mm,
Because there is a point when they are at school and then you suddenly have time, and then you're like, I know a lot of women that have feel a bit lost that I've done coaching
mm.
for at that point. So
Yeah, and in the UK, luckily, women do have the option to request flexible working, even though the
yes,
employer doesn't have to obviously comply. But I think that that's not really an option for so many women, um, and people who kind of who don't have a way to request it. I know in the States as well, it's a really big issue with having to go back to work.
yeah,
Sometimes when you're still, you know, when you're still
breastfeeding.
getting over, surgery. So I think that's it's an issue, and I think in the UK we're probably more advanced
Yeah.
in terms of the rules that allow women to request that.
Yeah,
That's
I
really
think
been
as well,
helpful.
if you are a female leader, then you know, don't I think it's really important to be honest and role model. I think that's so important
Mm,
as well. Actually, what support are you getting at home, and actually being quite honest and open about that. And I think helping other women progress in the workplace is really important. Don't pull up that drawbridge behind you or be dismissive like your female boss was when she sounded almost quite resentful.
yeah.
That you got something that she didn't, just because I guess the rules and the laws had changed in that time. I think there's a lot to be said for being a good leader and a good friend to other
Mm.
women within your business, because that is the only way, I think, when women club together, form those communities, um, that is how we're going to really enact change across businesses more widely in society.
Absolutely. I really like the way that you've kind of pitched that because I think it's absolutely true. That's the reason for this podcast and to create a community of women who can
Yeah,
actually help each other through these times. It's like that, Sheryl Sandberg's book, the Lean In book, where she
yeah,
said,
yeah,
she was the first director to say, actually, we do need parking that is suitable for pregnant women because we can't walk across the parking lot every morning.
yeah,
It's not comfortable. So I think it's these things. It's that creating the environment where people are aware of this as an issue, of
yeah,
women's
absolutely.
issues as an issue. So that's been really helpful. Thank you for joining us. If people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, thank you so much. So they can obviously get me on LinkedIn. So that's where I spend a lot of time. Elizabeth Willits on LinkedIn. And our website is investinginwomen.co.uk.
And get your book.
And yeah, I
We'll
get my
chat
book
later, dear.
Flex. Flex is available from all good bookstores.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Thank
It's been
you.
lovely speaking with you.
Thanks. Oh, thanks for having
Okay,
me.
bye.
Bye.